Divorce lawyers, what's the worst way you've seen someone over their spouse? I'm no lawyer, but I spent a good chunk of my career working for one who specialized in divorce cases. This story sticks out in my mind, not because it's the most shocking, but because it's a stark reminder of how twisted and unfair life can get. This guy, let's call him Bob, was raking in about $150K a year. He had a cushy job, a nice house, and all the trimmings that came with his salary. Somewhere along the line, he decided to order himself a Thai mail-order bride. Now, I know that sounds crass, but that's exactly what he did. He went online, clicked a few buttons, exchanged some emails, and soon enough, a young woman from Thailand, whom we'll call May, was arriving at his doorstep. May was kind, hardworking, and genuinely trying to make the best of her new life. She and Bob had 3 kids together, all adorable and full of potential. The eldest, a daughter, was particularly talented in gymnastics, to the point where she was getting professional coaching. May dedicated herself to raising the kids and managing the household. She didn't work outside the home. Instead, she poured all her energy into the family. But Bob? Well, Bob got bored. Maybe the novelty of having a foreign bride wore off, or maybe he was just a jerk from the start. Either way, Bob started having an affair with a colleague. He'd sneak around, making excuses about late meetings or business trips, while May was left at home, blissfully unaware of the betrayal brewing. Eventually, Bob decided he wanted out. He no longer wanted a Thai wife or mixed-race kids. He wanted a fresh start with his new fling. So, he filed for divorce. May was blindsided. One day, she was managing the chaos of 3 kids in a household, and the next, she was staring at divorce papers. May's only concern was her children. She loved them fiercely and was terrified of losing. Bob's lawyer, sensing an easy win, offered May a raw deal. Against her own attorney's advice, May was willing to accept it. She'd get a car, $1,200 in child support, no spousal support, and a $3,000 lump sum from their joint account. This money was barely enough to cover a couple months' rent for a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Her lawyer practically begged her to fight for more, but May was resolute. She wanted full custody of the kids so badly that she was willing to sacrifice everything else. She planned to pull the kids out of their expensive extracurricular activities and was ready to take on any job she could find, despite having no work experience in the States. The day of the court hearing, May walked in with her head held high. She had a quiet dignity about her that even the judge noticed. Bob, on the other hand, strutted in with his new girlfriend on his arm, looking smug and self-satisfied. The proceedings began, and it quickly became clear that Bob had no interest in actually taking care of the kids. His new girlfriend wasn't keen on playing stepmom, and Bob's work schedule was too demanding. Just wanted to wash his hands of the whole thing and move on with his new life. May's lawyer, sensing an opportunity, went for the jugular. He painted a vivid picture of a devoted mother willing to sacrifice everything for her children, and a callous father more interested in his new fling than his own flesh and blood. The judge, clearly moved, granted May full custody, much to Bob's chagrin. As we walked out of the courtroom, May broke down in tears, a mix of relief and overwhelming emotion. She hugged her lawyer, thanking him profusely. Bob stormed out, muttering curses under his breath, his new girlfriend trailing behind him looking less than thrilled. May moved into that modest 2-bedroom apartment and got a job as a cashier at a local grocery store. It was tough, but she managed. The kids adjusted to their new life, and slowly, things began to stabilize. May's daughter continued her gymnastics training, thanks to a community program that offered scholarships for talented kids. May's newfound stability came at a high price, and while her victory in court provided some relief, the battle was far from over. Bob's refusal to give her the $3,000 lump sum seemed petty, but it was also a pivotal point in the entire case. May had agreed to settle for a modest deal, willing to sacrifice her own comfort and future to ensure her children's well-being. However, Bob's arrogance and spite would come back to bite him in a way he never saw coming. As the day of the final court hearing approached, tensions were high. Bob, confident in his belief that the judge would see things his way, had dug in his heels. His lawyer, a seasoned professional, had advised him numerous times to accept the deal May was offering. It was more than fair, considering the circumstances. But Bob's ego wouldn't allow it. He was determined to make May's life as difficult as possible, even if it meant putting his own financial stability at risk. The courtroom was packed that day. May sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Bob glared at her from across the room. His new girlfriend was notably absent, a fact that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. May's lawyer, a hard-nosed but fair man named Tom, had taken her case for a nominal fee. He was known for his no-nonsense attitude and his firm belief in justice, and this case had given him what he called a justice boner. The proceedings began, and Bob's lawyer made his case, emphasizing Bob's willingness to provide for his children, but arguing against the lump sum payment. It was a weak argument, one that didn't hold much weight given Bob's salary and his refusal to negotiate in good faith. Tom stood up and painted a picture of May's sacrifices and dedication. He highlighted her willingness to live modestly and work tirelessly to provide for her children. He spoke about the talented daughter who could potentially compete in the Olympics and how pulling her out of training would crush her dreams. Tom's words resonated deeply with the judge, who listened intently. When it was Bob's turn to speak, he rambled on about his grievances, barely masking his disdain for May. His arrogance was palpable, and it was clear to everyone in the room that he was more interested in punishing May than in the welfare of his children. The judge, a stern but fair woman, took it all in. She asked a few pointed questions, clearly unimpressed with Bob's attitude. Finally, she delivered her verdict. She granted May the $3,000 lump sum and increased the child support payments to $1,700 per child per month. Bob's face turned ashen as he did the math in his head. Over half of his take-home pay would now go to supporting his ex-wife and children for the next decade. Bob was furious, but there was nothing he could do. His own stubbornness and spite had led to this outcome, and he had no one to blame but himself. May, on the other hand, was overcome with emotion. She had secured a future for her children, and while it would still be challenging, they would have a roof over their heads and the means to pursue their dreams. May's daughter continued her gymnastics training, her passion and talent undeterred by the upheaval in their lives. The community rallied around them, offering support and encouragement. May's story spread, and many admired her strength and dedication. Bob's life, meanwhile, took a downward spiral. His new relationship didn't last, and he found himself increasingly isolated. His finances were stretched thin, and the resentment he harbored only grew. He had underestimated May's resolve and the support she would receive. Tom, reflecting on the case, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had seen too many cases where justice wasn't served, where the vulnerable were taken advantage of. But this time, the system had worked, and May and her children had been given a fighting chance.